Say my greeting. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good early evening to our friends in the Arab states and India. Good evening to our friends in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. Good to see you all. Hope you are well.
Question 1, Ajahn. What are the best ways to ensure we encounter the Dhamma again and are drawn to practice it in future lives? Thank you.
So in short, the best way to ensure that you meet the Dhamma, Buddha Dhamma, is and have the opportunity to practice is by practicing it. So studying it, listening to it, and practicing it. And I have great confidence that the things we do in our past lives, the habits that we establish, carry over on some deep level of consciousness, the imprints that go in from habits well established over decades and then lifetimes. These imprints become very deep. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, but when I was a little boy, my favorite color was brown, which is not a very popular color, really. When I was a teenager, I had brown slippers, brown pajamas, and a brown bedspread. And my grandmother gave me a potted plant once. I think it was for my 10th birthday. And I used to go with my mum to the nursery, and the man at the nursery gave me a plant as well. By the time I was 15 years old, I had 15 potted plants in my bedroom, which is also a little bit strange for a teenage boy. So everything was brown, and I was surrounded by greenery, which is not that dissimilar to my current aesthetic. All my clothes are brown, and I live in a forest. When I was 17, graduated from high school, and I moved into my grandmother's house. Unfortunately, my grandmother was unwell, and she had to go to hospital, but we took care of her house. I had not studied Buddhism or yoga at that time, but I found the bedroom to be too dark, and I found the sitting room, which had windows on two sides, to be much more pleasant. And so I took the mattress from the bed and I put it on the floor. I didn't want to move out the bed. So as a 17-and-a-half-year-old, I started sleeping on the floor and living in Brisbane, subtropical, so kind of leaving the windows open. And again, all the plants were there and there was a lot of brown. And so I deduced from this that, just the things we do and become accustomed with, we carry those habits with us. There's a monk who's living with me now, Venerable Sampano from Abhayagiri, just entered his 8th Pansa. Before he became a Theravadan monk, he was a Korean monk for 6 years. He has an interesting story because he was living in the Midwest of America and he was going to university, I think somewhere in Indiana. And one of the subjects that he studied was Eastern philosophies, and he ended up studying some Buddhism. And then he ended up going to a Japanese temple teaching Zen. He ended up making a friend who was a Korean, and he ended up meeting a Korean nun. Apparently, most of the Koreans living in America are Christians, and there's not that many Korean nuns there. And he ended up living in Korea and becoming a bhikkhu, spent 6 years as a Korean monk. But the chances, he had a Korean friend who offered to travel with him to Korea. But the chances of in the Midwest having a Korean Buddhist friend who was willing to take you to a Korean Buddhist monastery and meeting a nun, these things, These things have to have resulted from past practice. And one of the ways it manifests, it's not necessarily, you know, there is different approaches to the way people practice and realize Dhamma. For people with really sharp faculties, it can be a pleasant and fast process. That's rare. For other people, it can be a slow and difficult process. For other people, it can be difficult and fast. For other people, it can be slow and pleasant. So nobody wants the difficult and slow. Everybody wants the pleasant and fast. But at the very least, we want the slow and pleasant. It'd be better than the slow and difficult. Hopefully, you're on one of the less painful parts. But one of the ways I believe having practiced Dhamma manifests in a person's life is a sense of some worldly weariness and a sense of looking for something deeper with more meaning. And so that might not necessarily be pleasant when you have this nagging feeling that there must be more to this. What's the real meaning of life? Why was I born? Those kind of questions that impinge on consciousness of people who have some spiritual qualities and some sensitivity. So in my own life, again, looking back at how previous Dhamma practice, I believe, manifested was this intuitive sense of not trusting that going to university was going to be helpful for me, not trusting, I didn't get a car, I didn't learn to drive. I had this very strong intuition that I had to keep my freedom, my ability to move, to not get stuck with car payments or car repairs or registration fees or petrol, the whole thing. So it's very rare for an Australian not to learn to drive and not to have a car. And I had this intuitive sense, don't do that, don't get that. And so what happened was when I decided to go overseas and go to Thailand, I said, okay, within 10 weeks, I'm going to go. And I was able to. That sense of keeping your options open. And so the more practice we do, the more likely we are to meet the Dhamma, and the more quickly we will meet the Dhamma. And so, if it's possible in the Thai tradition, in the forest tradition, or actually it's the Buddhist tradition, was to have the lay people come to the monastery once a week on the Uposatha day. That was a tradition that Lord Buddha established in India, ancient India. So if it's possible, and in Ajahn Chah reinvigorated that practice in northeast Thailand, having people come on the one pra. So if it's possible, for those of you who live in an Asian country with some Buddhist centers and monasteries, it's possible to spend a half a day or a day in a monastery or center once a week. It's just establishing that habit, going to the temple, going to the monastery, where you see these Buddhas and you see monks and you hear chanting. And then one of the benefits of chanting is that you keep chanting these chants, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. If you chant the Dhammacakka regularly, you chant the morning or evening puja, just keep recollecting these central teachings. And then that's going to become a very deep impression, and it's going to affect your mind. And you will carry your latent tendencies with you, and that deep knowing that there is something worth finding in the world, and a determination to find it. Even if, in my case, I was separated from the Dhamma for a period of time, but it manifested in my mind as simply knowing there is something out there that I have to find, and a determination, I'm going to find it. So that, I believe, is the result of past practice. And very important that we do as much practice as we can, because it makes the auspicious connections with the other practitioners. And so some of the people who are your Dhamma friends now, your Kalyanamitas, or maybe even yourself, some of these people are going to be the great teachers or the great practitioners in the future. If we keep practicing and we don't go backwards, we keep plodding and don't give up, you yourself will become a great practitioner. Some of your friends are going to become great masters. You maybe become arahants together in the same lifetime, in the same forest. I mean, the practices we do with each other, they they gain a momentum. The karmic connections we make with one another, they deepen. So, coming together to practice Dhamma is good. If you don't have that option, then some chanting, some listening to Dhamma, as well as practice. If you can increase from once a day to twice a day, great. If you can increase from twice a day to 3 times a day, great. If you can do retreats, wonderful. Also, I believe pilgrimage is a very powerful practice, especially to the 4 holy sites. When you pay with respects, with the mind of faith, to the place where Lord Buddha was enlightened, you're going to be making very, very deep karma with Buddha Dhamma. And you make the effort to get the time off work, to save the money, to get on a plane, to cross oceans and nations. It's a very deep expression of deep faith. And then when you bow your head at that spot with deep respect, then it's very, very auspicious karma. I know some monks who have special abilities, as I frequently mention, and one of those monks would take his students to India quite often, and he would come back and he would have sinus infections or be quite sick. He'd have a cough for weeks, and I'd ask him, "Why do you keep doing this to yourself? You've been so many times." He says, "Well, I don't do it for myself. I do it for my students." He said that he could see a stairway to heaven open up above the heads of the people who paid respects at the Bodhi tree. He could see it as it's not just a metaphor. The openings to heaven, Lord Buddha says in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, that people who go, when Ananda asked him, "When you're gone, what should we pay respects to?" And he said, "Well, a Bodhi tree." He said, Buddhists should go to the 4 holy sites with the mind of faith. And to do so, for those who do so, rebirth in heaven will not be difficult. So Lord Buddha is mentioning that the merit is strong. His Holiness the Dalai Lama once said that, karma and merit is an interesting thing. It's how much merit, how much good karma you make is affected by a few things: the quality of the person offering, the quality of the offering that is given, and also the quality of the recipient. Because Bodh Gaya is the seat of enlightenment and there is only one in this universe, it is the most holy site in the universe. And the Dalai Lama said, because of that, offerings made there are 7 times more potent. So this is one of the reasons why I think when people pay respects there with the mind of faith, that a stairway to heaven opens up above their heads, that they're increasing their likelihood of auspicious rebirth because they're making extremely potent merit, particularly with Buddha Dhamma. And obviously the place where Lord Buddha teaches the first sermon is another place to make very deep karma with the Dhamma. It's not possible for everybody to go. If it is possible, you should try to make it happen. And if it's not, you can watch documentaries and read books and look at YouTube clips. And there's a wholesome way to use YouTube. You can look at people's clips about the holy sites and about Buddhist history and about Buddhist art. You just keep putting in the imprints. Go to a museum if you've got a local museum and look at the beautiful Buddhas and the beautiful Bodhisattvas and the beautiful Buddhist paintings. You just keep putting in those impressions. Keep setting the aspiration. And then the rest takes care of itself. The merit and the karma that we make. Like I literally had people telling me I should do the 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat from the time I was 18 or 19. People were saying to me, "You should do a 10-day Vipassana retreat." And several people were saying this to me. So it comes back to you. And I didn't even know it was Buddhist. I just turned up and did it. It wasn't until I was there that I realized it was Buddhist. I hadn't read a single Buddhist book. I hadn't read a single Buddhist paragraph. But I signed up and attended a 10-day retreat. So that's how it works. It comes back to you. If you love it, if you appreciate it, if you respect it, if you revere it, it will be coming back to you in the future. Also, if you hate it and you're contentious with it, it'll be coming back to you in the future as well. Positive and negative attachments. So, yeah. But it is good to feel confident that whatever practice we do is going to have more results than just what we can see in the present. We're investing in our future. And even if we don't become a stream enterer this lifetime, Lumpur Nan says, you are reducing your number of rebirths when you practice sincerely. So less birth, aging, sickness, and death for you if you practice.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question 2, dear Ajahn. How do we actually prepare for death? Thank you.
Good question. I think one of the best ways to prepare for death, several things. One of them is to simply be aware of it. So in modern materialist culture, people kind of don't think about it much. And when people are sick, they're in hospital and old age homes, and it's not so visible. Very old people or very sick people, people about to die, is not a very common sight in modern materialist cultures. So it can be kind of out of sight, out of mind. And the problem with that is if you were to die, you might be significantly surprised, like so surprised, in fact, that you might even be in denial about it. One of the ways to be reborn as a ghost is to die and not recognize that you're dead, not recognize that the body died. So it's like, because it's like a person can be so not expecting it that when it happens, they don't recognize it for what it is. And then they might hang around in that place for centuries or until the rest of the eon or whatever. So scary. So, simple things, when we hear the news and we see the news, we remind ourselves, when you hear of that car accident, when you hear of that person who died of cancer, you remind yourself that could be me. This isn't something that happens to other people. This isn't a disaster that happens occasionally. This is the consequence of birth that's going to happen to everyone. We just need to constantly remind ourselves of that. It's like, this body is of the nature to die. It's going to die. And if you constantly remind yourself of that, when it happens, there should be this sense of, oh yeah, I knew this could happen. Oh, this is what's happening now. And you kind of, although you might struggle with it, there might be some fear. There's at least a recognition of what's occurring. Oh, I knew this could happen. And a really good thing to do, I believe, is visit your relatives and friends at the hospice or at home as they're approaching their death. I think that's one of the best ways that it really sinks in. When you've seen someone who was previously healthy, dynamic, and running all over the place, stuck on a bed, not able to move anymore, with someone else changing their nappies, you really get it. You really get, oh, this is our situation. This is what bodies go through if they live long enough to become old. And I'm fortunate in being a Buddhist monk in a predominantly Buddhist country. It's not a strange thing for a monk to want to visit somebody dying. And so I have sat alongside people very close to death many times, and kind of a familiarity with that scene, the way the color of the skin changes, the texture of the skin, the way the breathing occurs, and develop some sensitivity to what the consciousness might benefit from in those circumstances. And in the village where I go for alms, I mentioned to the villagers that I don't really like the tradition of waiting for someone to die and then inviting the monks to make merit. It's for the dead person, for the person whose body just died. I told them, please invite me before they die, several times. And so I think it's 4 or 5 villages that we've, in my 12 and a half years here, that visited by their bedside and try to encourage them to be with their breath, practice metta, recollect the good things that they did, forgive the unskillful things of themselves and others, and to visit them until they pass. Just sitting, sometimes there's not much to say really. When the situation's really miserable, sometimes there's just not much to say. But when there's a kind presence in the room wishing that person well, I believe it is of benefit. And when you're able to say to the person, you know, keep recollecting the good things. I know it's painful. I know it's difficult. It is going to end soon. And another thing you can say, at least to a practitioner, is as scary as it is, scary as it might seem, it's good to be mindful that you've done this a million times before. So just try to be in touch with that intuitive wisdom that got through it so many times before, and be interested rather than scared. Okay, well, here we are again. This is interesting. Because, we don't, the idea of death sounds so final. And the body dies. Consciousness goes to the next birth. So the person in a way isn't dead. It's an interesting word. When you say, how is she? Oh, she's dead. Like some tree stump. And it's like, of course, if you know great masters and you ask, it's in the time of the Buddha, people were going and asking the Buddha all the time, where did so-and-so go? Where did so-and-so go? And he was able to say, oh, this one was a stream enterer and he went to this heaven realm, and this one was an arahant, he didn't go anywhere, or this one was established in the three refuges, and he's a Davatimsa Deva, or this one was born as a mud sprite, or a tree Deva, or this one went to hell. It was like, it's very common in the sutras. So, what died? The body died. And the consciousness took a rebirth. So when we prepare for death, be mindful that, I sometimes encourage people not just to do Marananusati, recollection of death, you have to do rebirth nusati, recollection of your rebirth. Because it's really important that you establish a clear and bright and peaceful mind while the body is dying, understanding that you have to live with the consequences of the way you died. And I'm not a big supporter of euthanasia. It's the idea of injecting yourself with something that seems from the outside to make all the pain go away quickly. I think they give a combination of sleeping medicine and something that paralyzes you. So personally, I don't think it's good for the body to die when the mind is asleep. When consciousness comes to, and there's no body that it's attached with, it's probably going to experience significant confusion. What's it like when you yourself wake up from a very deep sleep? Do you have clarity when you awake straight away? Do you know where you are? If you're really deep sleep, you wake up and, where am I? Oh yeah. And so inducing a lot of sleepiness in consciousness, you don't want to fill your mind with hindrances as you're dying. So working with, also with painkillers, be a little bit careful. You want to be working with a little bit of pain, because that's what's going to help you to have some clarity, some presence of mind from mindfulness. If you have no pain, the mind's going to be dull. It's stoned, basically. And people like it from the outside, because that person isn't crying in pain. The person appears relaxed. Yeah, because the person is stoned and they're half asleep. Now, if you really care for a person, you'll probably lower their pain medication just a little so that they're working with some of that pain, and lower their sedative so that they're not quite so relaxed. Make sure that their faculties are sharp to whatever degree is possible, and remind them, get them recollecting the good things that they did, get them setting the intention to continue practice. Because, as I said, we have to live with the consequences of the way we die. That feeling of you being a self, that's going to continue. The body will be different. The realm might be different. But that feeling of me, here I am, conventional reality, that'll be there in your next body. And you need to prepare, we need to remind ourselves that we want to approach that moment, those final moments, with as much clarity and presence of mind as possible. Sometimes working with a bit of pain can be helpful to that process. Too much pain, obviously not. If the mind just gets ground down with miserable, oppressive feelings, that's not good. So to think in terms of a middle way. So yes, whenever you hear about death, remind yourself that could be me. A friend died of cancer young, well, that could be me. Someone died in a car crash, that could have been me. And visit people who are sick and dying. Say, I have this fate as well. This body will end in this. And set the intention to die mindfully. And it's a beautiful Sri Lankan tradition, I believe. A person, when they make merit, to actually write it down in a journal, the good things that you do. And it was a Sri Lankan tradition to have one of your relatives read it. Can you imagine a few decades go back and some of the things you did were quite sweet, kind things, you completely forgot about them. Then you wrote them all down. If you read them all down and your friend or your sister or whoever's still around is reading to you, do you remember when you helped your friends through a difficult situation? You gave them a loan or you gave them a gift when they really needed it. You remember when you visited this person in hospital? You remember when you took care of this person's children when their mother was sick? Do you remember the Katina ceremony? Do you remember the pilgrimage? Do you remember this retreat? Do you remember when you made that vow to meditate and chant every day and kept it since that day? And when I was visiting Malin recently, I reminded her that Malin, think of the 17 times that you went on pilgrimage in India. Think of Isipatana. She said she was a little girl. She loved that word when she was studying Buddhism in school. Malin was my committee member, close student, good friend. She loved the word Isipatana, Marukadayawan. She heard that word and she loved it. Mikadaya in Pali, deer park. Marukadayawan in Thai. So I said to her, remember Isipatana, Marukadayawan. And just remind her, like she's a anattā, the man who offered the monastery in Savatthi. He's in Tushita heaven now. Visakha, she's in Tushita heaven now. Do you remember, Malin, these people that you so admire and appreciate? Why don't you go and see them? Go and visit them. Recollect your merit. Set your intention. You're going to go and meet Visakha. You're going to go and meet anattā now. Finally, you get your chance. And, take your merit and go. Don't worry about us. I'll meet you there later. And apparently she did go there. So, you don't want a sad scene around someone dying. You want everybody crying. Mind you, we did all cry, but they were kind of happy, joyful, loving tears. They weren't kind of like, oh my God, how am I ever going to live without you? It wasn't self-pity festival. It was, I really appreciate the person you've been and the good things you've done, and really wish you all the best in your journey. Take your merit and go. And I believe she went to a happy destination. So yes, hopefully something I said was helpful.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. Question 3, dear Ajahn. How can one work towards being less sensitive and less defensive upon receiving critical feedback from others? Meditation seems to make me more sensitive in several ways. Thank you.
So I think a really helpful thing to do is just kind of give yourself the instruction when you're receiving critical feedback to not react in the moment. So you can kind of have some kind of stock phrases that you defer to. thank you. I'll think about what you've said. It's not agreeing with them. It's not disagreeing with them. It gives you a bit of space. Well, thanks for that. I'll think about it. The person will probably feel somewhat satisfied. Okay, I gave them a piece of my mind, and now they have to think about it. And you can then we have to, then we do, to be mindful, we try to be centered, that feeling, that kind of, who are you to go, that defensiveness, and it comes up. You just kind of be mindful of that and don't indulge it. It's like a wave of energy. Allow the wave to come up or allow it to subside. You don't have to ride that wave, just allow the wave to flow through the mind. And then the important thing about critical feedback is sometimes there's some truth to it. Sometimes we need to hear it. And we can be quite critical. They shouldn't have said it that way. They shouldn't have said it that time. Lord Buddha does say in his teachings about right speech that ideally we ask a person's permission before we give them feedback, and we consider the timing. We make sure it's a good time, and we also should try to be significantly free of the fault that we're about to criticize them for. Hypocrisy is another of the kilesas. But most people probably aren't going to be perfectly skillful in their critical feedback. Most people aren't training in right speech. So we just have to expect it. Sometimes criticism's fair, sometimes it's unfair. And Lord Buddha says with regards to criticism, that we should be like the earth. The earth doesn't scream out and cry when somebody throws excrement on it, or fat from an old pot, or dirty washing water, or whatever. The earth just takes it. And so Lord Buddha said we should train ourselves to be like the earth. And there's that interesting paragraph in the Dhammapada. When somebody criticizes you and anger arises, silence yourself like a broken gong. So it's like, somebody was reading to me, Mechi Ying, the nun who lives here at Anandagiri, was reading I'm making a calendar to distribute at Katina, and we were thinking of nice pithy little teachings to put on each month, and in Pali and in English and in Thai, and various phrases, paragraphs we were looking at. One of them was, when someone treats you unskillfully, it is a sign of your strength when you do not get angry. Kem Kang in Thai. It's a sign of your toughness and your power and your strength when you don't give rise to anger. It's a very beautiful thing to hear, because we don't necessarily hear that in the modern world. We might think that giving a person a piece of your mind, telling them what you really think, is a lot of people would think that's courage. Lord Buddha's explaining that not allowing your mind to fall into anger is a true sign of strength. We remind ourselves of these things. And sometimes, someone's giving you some critical feedback and you didn't like it, then you kind of have to go off by yourself and be a little bit quiet and breathe through the reaction before committing to responding, retaliating, being defensive. Just go away. Take some space from it. Get some space from that person. Breathe through the reaction, and then think about it. Do they have a point? I might need to. We all have areas that we need to work on. So some criticisms are valid. But it is true that meditation makes the mind more sensitive. It is true. And in our training of mindfulness, somebody says something to notice. Somebody says something that you don't like. So that's sense consciousness coming in at the ear consciousness base. Then it becomes an unpleasant feeling. And that's actually what we don't like. We don't like the feeling that's occurring in our own mind. And then we get upset with that person because we think they made that feeling arise. So in terms of training in mindfulness, you have to be mindful of an unpleasant feeling in your heart area. And just be mindful it is an unpleasant feeling. And then unpleasant feelings arise, stay for some time, cease. if what they said was really mean, it might not. It might take a while to cease, and it might keep arising. And then we have these practices of offering forgiveness. It's a wonderful Buddhist practice. Is we accept karma, causes that we've created in the past, and we don't want to be contentious. We don't want to have enemies. So for our own sake, we forgive people. Yeah, so I think just setting a strong determination that I will listen, I will be mindful of my reaction, I will thank the person, consider what they said. And if the criticism was, you feel not valid, not justified, not fair, you can find a way to express that. But you wait for your emotion to die down. Journaling is good, right? Write it down. Why you think it's unfair, and why you think it's not reasonable. And I mean, it's pretty common for human beings to be unfair and unreasonable, unfortunately. But when you come to say this, this is a real training in right speech. Here's your opportunity to say something very calmly. I considered your feedback, and all things considered, I don't think your points are valid, actually. I don't agree with you. Very, very calmly. So, don't have to be angry when someone, or self-righteous. Just calmly say, well, I did think about it. And you know what? I don't agree with you. I think you might be wrong on this. So, just walk away. Thank you. Nice and calm. I mean, what a lot of people get into, isn't it? It's like somebody criticizes you, then it's like hit them. It's like you feel like you've been hit, and you want to hit them back. Well, what about you? How about when you did this last week? And don't forget 5 years ago, and then there was that time 15 years ago, and I still remember from my childhood when you said this. It's like you can push that button of best of, most of, greatest hits. All the reasons you can be upset with that person. So, we've been down that road many times. And, it's nice if we don't have to go there. But I think it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, there's a wound, you have to go to hospital. It's like somebody said something that hurt, take the time for the heal to subside a little bit, for the pain to subside a little bit. And then they might get back to you. Did you think about what I said? You say, I'm still thinking about it. You don't have to commit to having a response straight away. I'm still thinking about it. Thank you. I'll get back to you. How long will it take? I don't know. A year? We'll see. Depends what they said, right? But you don't have to commit to responding necessarily. If it's a boss, maybe you do. Or if it's a partner, maybe you do. But sometimes you have to get back to them straight away. Give me a couple of days. I'm still thinking about it. And if we respond to criticism really maturely and really skillfully, somebody who has a habit of unskillful criticism will probably criticize you less. Like, oh, I can't just get an easy reaction out of that one. I can't just dump on this one. This one is thoughtful and has healthy boundaries and knows how to be skillfully assertive. I'm going to be careful with my criticism of this one. But yeah, there are benefits. Training in right listening and in right speech.
Question for Dear Ajahn. May I know if seeking encouragement or for an affirmation is a form of seeking praise? Thank you.
It is. But I would also say that it's normal. So, as human beings, children need skillful parenting. If they don't get it from their parents, then they need a guardian, a protector, a carer, someone else to give them positive reinforcement. That's simply part of how we grow up healthy and mature. We need, as human beings, someone to say, good job, well done, good boy, good girl. And it's very lovely when the children put food in the monks' bowls in Thailand and the parents go, Sadhu, and they like, cry, gang, and say, oh, you're so clever, you're so skillful, you're so good. They get all this positive reinforcement from being generous from childhood. Very, very, very nice to see. So I think with any of these worldly Dhamma questions, it's a matter of the right amount. So we should know, is our need for positive reinforcement a bit compulsive? Is it too needy? Or is it just fair enough? If your teacher has told you you need to put more effort into practice, you've put more effort into your practice, you come and tell your teacher, I think it's skillful for your teacher to say, great, well done, Sadhu, I'm proud of you. That's fine. But it's the right amount. And one of the most important things I think we all need to learn to do is hold enough loving kindness in our own experience that we don't need others to love us so much, because we have a good amount of love there already. Healthy self-care, appreciation of your good qualities, awareness of your faults, but appreciation of the goodness, and a sense of lovingly supporting yourself in the process. That's the foundation for having loving kindness for your friends, your family, your teachers, the neutral people, and eventually the difficult people. If we have that, we should know for ourselves when we're doing something good, right? And we can feel pleased with that. But I think at the same time, most human beings need a little bit of positive reinforcement from their guardians, carers, friends, mentors. I think that's healthy, as long as it's in the right amount.
Question 5, dear Ajahn. How to realize anattā, non-self? Thank you.
Well, the Lord Buddha's first teaching, after he had realized not self, was the teaching on the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So basically, through our Buddhist practice, we realize anattā. But this is the culmination of practice. To realize anattā is basically synonymous with realizing nibbana, purifying the mind, liberating the mind. How do we have insights into anattā, not self? So we do, in order to prepare the mind for the big insight, for the liberation, to begin purifying the mind, we need to have smaller insights, and that comes from active contemplation. So one of the most potent and effective is to contemplate the body as made up of parts, not being a solid self. So that sense, for people who haven't meditated much, there is that sense of the body being the self. People don't really, my knee pain, my back pain, my toothache, there isn't much kind of investigation of that convention. And so most people take it as a given. They are their bodies. They also think they're their thoughts. They also think they're their feelings. And it's kind of a confused mess, a hot mess, as we say. And so we need to apply mindfulness to this. So you practice your breath meditation. Sometimes you might have a focus on metta. Sometimes you might have a focus on forgiveness, working with the conventional self, trying to maintain some conventional well-being to support the process. And sometimes we have to look at hair of the head, hair on the body, nails, teeth, skin, the skeleton, the muscles, the blood. So and what happens is when we very, very sincerely just place our mindful awareness on teeth, for example, for a period of time, aware of the in-breath, danta, aware of the out-breath, danta. You can use the English, whatever language, aware of the in-breath, teeth, aware of the out-breath, teeth. If we do this sincerely, the feeling of being a self can disappear for a few moments. So similarly with the blood, there's about 7 or 8 liters of blood flowing around in your body. Just get a sense for the liquid in the body that's flowing through the veins. And you can ask yourself, is this myself? Because there is a sense of self. So in a way, we have to go and try and find it. Okay, where are you? Are you in the teeth? No. Are you in the bones? No. Are you in the blood? No. If we very sincerely ask this with a contemplative attitude, the feeling of being a self can go away for a few moments, a few seconds. And this is like chinks in the armor of the delusion. It's like, oh, it's actually not there. It's not there. I'm projecting it onto it. I'm thinking, I'm interpreting this phenomena as this. This is an habitual way of perceiving things. When I try to investigate, it's not there. If you have a period of retreat, you can do it, more systematically. It's like go through all of the body parts, the 32 parts, as they're in Pali. But you can also investigate the sense bases. Okay, sights that I like, sights that I don't like, tastes that I like, tastes that I don't like, sounds that I like, sounds that I don't like. And you just place your awareness on your ear. Okay, is myself there? Where is this self? Is it in the ear? And again, there's just a sense of, no, it's not actually. Okay, was it in the eyes? No, no self there. Is it in the tongue? No, it's not. Well, isn't it interesting that I like these sights, I like those sounds, I like those tastes, I don't like these sights, I don't like these sights, I don't like those tastes. So what is that? We get an inquiring attitude to what is this phenomenon that's reacting to all of these sense impressions with liking and disliking. All of the thoughts you have, your plans, your future, your past. Put your awareness in your brain. Is that you? Is grey matter in the skull? No self there either. What about the heart? All these feelings, all these emotions. You just place the awareness in the center of the body. Feel that beat. Boom, boom, boom. Are you there, self? Are you in this heart? All these feelings? Where are you? Oh, not there either. And we just do that we don't want to be contentious with it. When we say practicing, there's this word asubha, which means not beautiful. We contemplate the not beautiful aspect of the body. Why? Because we're committed to habitually perceiving them as beautiful. It's not our own, at least those of others. You know who you think is beautiful. You know who you think is handsome. You know who your favorite pop star or movie star is. You want to look at them. You want to see their shapely forms and their six packs or whatever it is. And, and it's like you don't have to see it as disgusting. That's my point. You don't have to see it as something to hate. Hate isn't an antidote to love. It's the same thing, inverted. You just need to see it truthfully as it is. And when you see it truthfully as it is, you won't perceive it as beautiful. So you just need to see teeth as teeth. You don't need to see them as disgusting. You just need to see bones as bones. Again, they're not disgusting. They're just bones. We see it as earth element. Blood is water element. Teeth and bones, earth element. I started doing intermittent fasting again 3 days ago, not having any calories after 3:30 until 6:30, 14 hours a day of no calories. And I lost 1 kilogram in 3 days, interestingly enough. Very, very powerful practice. And I was doing a 2-hour meditation sit in the afternoon. And it's not so surprising. I shouldn't think that the mind gets more sensitive during a 2-hour meditation session. And I felt that I could feel the fat over my left breast melting. I could feel the wind element and the fire element dissolving the water element. I could literally feel that because I observed the breath in the heart area. And I kind of feeling it the next morning, and I'm like, yeah, my man boobie is smaller than it was 2 days ago. So, yes, So there, really is earth element, water element, fire element, moving around, buzzing around in there. And when mindfulness gets sensitive enough, you can perceive these things as they are, the elements, less of a sense of self. So normally we have to do it within the formal meditation period. It is difficult for busy people with busy lay lives to kind of perceive the body as a skeleton, or just be aware of your teeth as you go to practice throughout your day. But once your mind has got some peacefulness, some collectedness, it's really good to do this investigation, because basically the more you think you're a self, the more you suffer, in terms of an abbreviated understanding of the cause of suffering. The more you really think you're a self, the more you suffer. The more you're able to observe the sense of self with some objectivity, a sense of humor, some forgiveness, some spaciousness, you're able to reflect around it, the less you suffer. So yeah, okay, here he is again with his opinion. Like, I have quite a joking relationship with my reactivity. Sometimes somebody really upsets me, I actually count how many times I think they shouldn't have said that. It's not right I said that. I'm like 5. But they really shouldn't have said that. They should have been more respectful. 6. But they should have been grateful. I helped them so much. 7. And and you get to the point where it's like, yes, for the 50th time, I understand. I heard you. You have a beautiful opinion. You're so right. I agree with you completely. They should have been more grateful. They shouldn't have said it that way. You have helped them so much. What a wonderful opinion. 51. And it's just a way of saying to myself, I heard it. You can put it down now. And it's like, yeah, we need to find ways to get some space, because if those triggers get triggered and we just pick up our story, some people take that to their death, and it actually gets worse. They hold on to the grudge a little more tightly. They really aren't going to feel. Some people say this, I hate him. I'm going to come back as a ghost and haunt him and make his life miserable. And some deluded people make these kind of statements. Be very, very careful what you say. And I don't care who I hate, how much I hate them. I'm going to my lotus. Take me to my lotus. Get me away from these awful people. So on the path, as one step on the path to liberation, of course, and hopefully taking some insight with me to that destination. Anattā, Pindika, and Visakha, as we were talking earlier, they're stream enterers. They're established in enlightenment. They're experiencing one of their last births. They're going to become arahants under Maitreya. That's what I heard. So you can get your insights, get your merit, and then off to your lotus. Come down and finish it off later. But I digress. I hope I answered the question to some degree.